Some marriages begin with love. Others begin with promises. But Emily Carter's marriage began with a contract placed quietly on a polished glass table. The room smelled faintly of leather and expensive cologne. Across the table sat Adrien Cole, one of the youngest billionaires in the country, a man known for turning every opportunity into profit. His reputation in the business world was legendary, brilliant, ruthless, and completely uninterested in love. Emily sat with her hands folded tightly in her lap, trying to calm the nervous beating of her heart. Just weeks earlier, her father's company had collapsed under massive debt. Creditors were closing in, and everything her family owned was about to disappear. Then Adrien Cole made an offer. He would pay every cent of her father's debt. In return, Emily would marry him for 1 year. No romance. No expectations. Just a simple legal arrangement that would help Adrien maintain a certain public image while solving Emily's family crisis. To Adrien, it was just another negotiation. To Emily, it was the most frightening decision she had ever made. The contract lay between them like a silent witness. Adrien watched her carefully, his sharp eyes studying every small movement. Emily looked nothing like the confident socialites he was used to dealing with. She seemed soft-spoken, almost fragile, yet there was a quiet determination in her eyes. Finally, Emily picked up the pen. Her hand trembled slightly as she signed her name. In that moment, her life changed forever. Adrien signed next, closing the contract with calm certainty. Neither of them realized that this simple agreement, built without love, would slowly transform both of their lives in ways neither of them expected. Because sometimes the most unexpected marriages are the ones that change people the most. And this was only the beginning. Emily Carter had never seen a house as large as the one Adrien Cole called home. The black car rolled slowly through tall iron gates, revealing a long driveway lined with perfectly trimmed trees. At the end stood a massive mansion of white stone and glass that looked more like a luxury hotel than a place where someone actually lived. Emily sat quietly in the back seat, staring out the window as the car stopped in front of the grand entrance. A team of uniformed staff stood waiting politely by the door. This was her new home. But it didn't feel like home at all. Adrien stepped out of the car first, his expression calm and unreadable as always. To him, this place was simply part of his everyday life. Wealth, luxury, and control surrounded him everywhere he went. Emily stepped out slowly, clutching her small suitcase. Everything about the mansion made her feel small and out of place. Inside, the house was even more breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, marble floors reflected the warm lights above, and every corner looked perfectly designed. Yet the beauty of the mansion carried a strange silence. Adrien turned to her, his voice steady and formal. "Your room is on the second floor. The staff will help you settle in." Emily nodded politely. There was no warmth in his tone, but there wasn't cruelty either. Adrien simply treated the situation exactly as it was, a business arrangement. Later that evening, Emily met someone unexpected. Sophia Cole, Adrien's younger sister. Unlike Adrien, Sophia greeted Emily with a bright smile and open arms. "Welcome to the family," she said warmly. For the first time since arriving, Emily felt a small sense of comfort. Sophia studied her brother carefully that night. Because for the first time in years, Adrien Cole seemed just slightly distracted. The mansion grew quiet as night settled over the city. Most of the staff had finished their duties, and the long hallways of Adrien Cole's home were filled with a deep, peaceful silence. For Emily Carter, however, the quiet only made her nerves worse. She stood inside the large bedroom prepared for her, staring at the enormous bed in the center of the room. Soft golden lights glowed from the walls, and the wide windows revealed a breathtaking view of the city skyline. But none of that comforted her. Emily had never imagined her wedding night would feel like this, awkward, unfamiliar, and filled with uncertainty. She paced slowly across the room, twisting her fingers together as her thoughts raced. Everything had happened so quickly, the contract, the wedding, the move into the mansion. And now she was here, married to a man she barely knew. A quiet knock suddenly echoed at the door. Emily froze. Before she could say anything, the door opened gently and Adrien stepped inside. He looked calm and composed as always, his presence filling the room with quiet authority. Emily's heart immediately began racing. Adrien noticed the tension in her posture. He had not come to pressure her or make demands. In his mind, the arrangement had always been clear. This marriage was simply a contract. But Emily didn't know what to expect. As Adrien walked a few steps closer to explain that she didn't need to be afraid, Emily's fear suddenly overwhelmed her. A loud scream escaped her lips. The sound echoed through the quiet room. Adrien stopped instantly. completely frozen. For a moment, neither of them moved. And in that single shocking second, Adrien realized something he had never considered before. Emily wasn't just nervous. She was completely innocent and truly terrified. The sound of Emily's scream faded into an uncomfortable silence. Adrien Cole stood still, his sharp eyes fixed on the frightened woman standing across the room. For a moment, the powerful billionaire looked completely stunned. He had faced aggressive competitors, billion-dollar negotiations, and ruthless corporate battles without hesitation. But he had never faced anything like this. Emily's face had turned pale with embarrassment. Her hands trembled as she stepped back, clearly overwhelmed by the situation. She hadn't meant to scream. Fear had simply taken control of her in that moment. Adrien slowly raised his hands in a calm gesture. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said quietly. His voice was firm but surprisingly gentle. Emily blinked in surprise. She had expected anger or cold frustration, not patience. Adrien took a step backward, giving her more space. "This marriage is an agreement," he continued. "Nothing more. You don't have to worry about anything happening that you're not comfortable with." The tension in the room slowly began to ease. Emily looked at him carefully, trying to understand if he truly meant what he said. Adrien Cole was known in the business world as a man who never wasted words. If he made a promise, he kept it. After a long moment, Emily nodded. "Thank you," she whispered softly. Adrien gave a small, respectful nod in return before turning toward the door. Before leaving, he paused for just a second. Seeing the fear in Emily's eyes had stirred something unfamiliar inside him. It wasn't anger or annoyance. It was guilt. That night, Adrien walked down the quiet hallway of his mansion with an unusual thought lingering in his mind. For the first time in years, the arrogant billionaire wondered if he had made a decision that might change far more than just his public image. The days that followed the awkward wedding night passed more peacefully than Emily had expected. Life inside Adrien Cole's mansion slowly settled into a quiet routine. Each morning the staff carried out their duties with perfect efficiency, the halls remained spotless, and everything seemed to move according to an invisible schedule. Yet Emily still felt like a visitor in someone else's world. Instead of isolating herself, she began helping where she could. Sometimes she assisted the kitchen staff with simple meals. Other times she arranged fresh flowers in the living room or chatted kindly with the housekeepers. The staff quickly noticed something unusual about their new mistress. She treated everyone with warmth and respect. Adrien began noticing it too. One evening, as he walked into the dining room after a long day at work, he paused when he heard laughter coming from the kitchen. Emily stood beside one of the cooks, carefully learning how to prepare a dish while listening with genuine interest. It was a simple moment, but it caught Adrien's attention. Most people who entered his world became obsessed with luxury and status. Emily, however, seemed completely uninterested in those things. She valued people instead. Over the next few weeks, Adrien found himself speaking to her more often. Their conversations were simple at first. Small discussions about daily routines or polite questions about her family. But slowly the cold distance between them began to fade. One evening Adrien returned home visibly exhausted after dealing with a difficult business crisis. Emily noticed the stress on his face immediately. Without saying much, she simply offered him a quiet moment of comfort. Adrien hesitated, then gently pulled her into a brief hug. The gesture surprised both of them. Yet in that small moment of closeness, something new began to grow between them. Something neither contracts nor business deals could explain. Not everyone was pleased with Adrien Cole's success. In the world of billion-dollar corporations and powerful investors, success always attracted enemies. One of Adrien's most determined rivals was Victor Langford, a businessman who had spent years trying and failing to defeat Adrien in the corporate world. Victor watched everything Adrien did. So when news of Adrien's sudden marriage began circulating among elite circles, Victor became curious. Adrien Cole was known for many things: intelligence, ambition, and ruthless decision-making. But marriage had never been part of his plans. Victor decided to investigate. It didn't take long for his team to discover the truth about Emily Carter's struggling family and the financial deal that had saved them. To Victor, this information was the perfect weapon. Within weeks, rumors began spreading across business media and social circles. People whispered that Adrien's wife had married him purely for money. Others claimed she had manipulated the billionaire into saving her family's failing business. The story grew larger with every retelling. Soon reporters began asking questions. Emily noticed the tension almost immediately. Adrien's meetings became longer, his phone calls more serious, and the atmosphere in the mansion changed. When Emily finally saw the rumors online, her heart sank. She knew the truth, but the world outside didn't. Feeling responsible for the damage to Adrien's reputation, Emily began thinking about something painful. Maybe the best way to protect him was to leave. That night, she quietly packed a small bag. But as she stepped toward the front gate of the mansion, she didn't realize that someone had already noticed. Adrien Cole had just arrived home, and he was about to discover something that would change everything. The large iron gates of the mansion stood quietly in the cool night air. Emily Carter walked slowly down the long driveway, holding a small bag in her hand. Each step felt heavier than the last. She kept reminding herself that leaving was the right thing to do. The rumors spreading through the media were hurting Adrien's reputation. Every headline made it seem as if she had trapped him in marriage for money. Emily couldn't bear the thought of being the reason his name was being dragged through scandal. She disappeared, the story might fade. At least that was what she hoped. Just as she reached the gate, the bright headlights of a black car suddenly illuminated the driveway. The vehicle stopped quickly and the door opened. Adrien Cole stepped out. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. Adrien's sharp eyes immediately noticed the bag in Emily's hand. His expression hardened as he realized what was happening. "You're leaving," he said quietly. Emily lowered her gaze. "I thought it would make things easier for you," she replied softly. "The rumors, they're my fault." Adrien stared at her in disbelief. 4 weeks he had been battling reporters, investors, and business rivals, yet the thought that Emily might actually leave had never crossed his mind. Something tightened painfully in his chest. Without thinking, Adrien walked toward her and stopped just a few steps away. "Easier for me?" he repeated. For the first time, the confident billionaire looked shaken. Because in that moment he realized something terrifying. The mansion behind him suddenly felt empty at the thought of Emily leaving. Before she could take another step, Adrien gently pulled her into a firm hug. And finally, he understood the truth he had been avoiding. He didn't want the contract anymore. He wanted her. For a moment, Emily stood frozen in Adrien's arms, surprised by the sudden warmth of his embrace. The night air around them was quiet, but the tension that had built between them over the past few weeks slowly began to fade. Adrien was the first to step back, though he didn't move far. His expression, usually calm and controlled, carried a rare seriousness. "You're not leaving," he said firmly. Emily looked at him with uncertainty. "But the rumors, they're hurting your reputation. People think I used you." Adrien shook his head. "I've faced worse attacks in the business world," he replied calmly. "But running away would only make those rumors stronger." Emily hesitated. She had only wanted to protect him. Adrien noticed the concern in her eyes and felt a strange sense of gratitude. No one had ever worried about him the way she did. "This problem started because someone wants to bring me down," he continued. "And I already know who that is. Victor Langford." Adrien had spent years dealing with his rival's schemes. This time was no different. But this time he wasn't facing the situation alone. Instead of leaving, Emily agreed to stand beside him. Over the next few days, Adrien's legal team began gathering evidence of Victor's attempts to manipulate the media and spread false information. The truth slowly started coming to light. When the story finally broke, the headlines changed completely. Victor's plot was exposed and Adrien's reputation was cleared. At a formal business event celebrating the victory, Adrien surprised everyone by publicly thanking Emily for her support. Standing beside him, Emily realized something important. Their marriage had started as a contract, but now they were truly facing life together. The 1-year anniversary of their contract approached quietly, but the tension in the mansion was palpable. Emily had spent months learning the rhythms of Adrien Cole's world, while Adrien had quietly discovered that the woman he once saw as just a business arrangement had become indispensable to his life. The final documents lay neatly on the polished desk in Adrien's private office. Emily approached hesitantly, her hands slightly trembling. This was it, the moment when she could finally choose freedom over obligation. Adrien stood nearby, his usual commanding presence softened by something new, vulnerability. He didn't speak at first, letting Emily take the lead. I'm ready to sign," Emily said softly, her eyes downcast. Adrien's heart sank. Not because he wanted the contract to continue, but because he realized he didn't want her to leave. Not now, not ever. "Emily," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion, "this contract doesn't matter to me anymore." She looked up, surprised. "I don't care about legal agreements," he continued. "I care about you. I've realized that I've fallen in love with you." Emily's eyes widened. For weeks, she had suspected he cared more than he let on, but hearing it aloud made her heart swell. She stepped closer and quietly hugged him, holding on tightly. "I love you too," she whispered. The documents remained untouched on the desk. They no longer mattered. In that small office, the contract that had started as a lifeline between them became irrelevant. Their bond had grown stronger than any piece of paper could define. For the first time, Adrien smiled freely, not the businessman's controlled smile, but one filled with genuine happiness. They didn't need agreements or deadlines to define their relationship. They only needed each other. And in that moment, both knew this was just the beginning of forever. Months had passed since the contract ended, but the mansion felt warmer than ever. Emily Carter and Adrien Cole had moved beyond legal arrangements and into something far deeper: trust, companionship, and love. The couple had grown closer with every passing day. Adrien no longer seemed distant or cold. Instead, he laughed more freely, his sharp eyes softening whenever Emily was near. Emily, in turn, had found confidence in his presence, feeling safe and cherished in a way she never imagined possible. One bright afternoon, Adrien asked Emily to join him in the mansion's garden. Sunlight streamed through the tall trees, casting golden patterns on the ground. Adrien held a small velvet box in his hands, his signature calm now touched with nervous excitement. "Emily," he began, his voice steady but tender, "we started with a contract. A promise that was never meant to hold love. But over time, I've realized something important." Emily looked at him curiously, her heart beating fast. "I don't want agreements or conditions defining us anymore. I want us, completely, forever. Will you marry me, for real this time?" Tears of joy filled Emily's eyes. Without hesitation, she threw her arms around him in a long, heartfelt hug. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Friends and family later celebrated their second wedding in a simple, intimate ceremony. There were no contracts, no obligations, just two people who had started as strangers and grown into soulmates. As Adrien hugged Emily during the ceremony, he remembered the terrified scream of their first night together. That moment of fear had led to trust, and trust had blossomed into true love. What had begun as a practical arrangement had transformed into a bond that neither power nor circumstance could ever break. And as they held each other tightly, the promise of forever was no longer on paper, it was in their hearts.